Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and thank everyone who has liked, subscribed, and commented on my videos. I truly appreciate your support. If you like this episode, please do leave a like or a comment. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm for a small but growing channel like mine. Okay, so let's get started. The eagle eyes and the truly observant have probably noticed I'm already down to one employee and one aircraft. So what's going on? Well, it turns out that my employee was basically lazy. All he wanted to do was go to the Caribbean, stay on layover, and drink mojitos. Wait, actually, no, that's me. He was just expensive, so I dropped his ass. So we're down to one aircraft, which is just the Pilatus PC-12, and just myself as the employee. The other thing is we have two unassigned skill points. So let's check out the skill tree. At this point, I'm not really sure where to put our points. Most importantly, I can do every job that OnAir has to offer. Some of the others, like FBO agreements, really start merging into the tycoon aspect of the game, and that doesn't really excite me, at least at this point. It would generate some more revenue for us. Bank loans potentially is probably where I'm thinking about putting it, or if we pan down a little bit here, we can see hiring agreements. So that would make our employees level up faster and make them cheaper. So right now, I think I'm just going to hold on to them. All right, so we have a couple jobs pending. And this is definitely a tip for everyone who is starting to move up to slightly larger aircraft. Don't be afraid to see if you can combine multiple jobs together. So you can see here, I'm located in TNCC, which is up in Curacao, up in the Caribbean, off the coast of Venezuela. And I was able to find a medical job, which generally only has a couple passengers that are required. And then I was also able to find a cargo mission, and I was able to take both of them at the same time. You might also find, like I did, that as I moved up to Curacao, I found another job in Bonaire, and I was able to load up two sets of cargo, one that had gone to Bonaire and the other to Curacao. Matter of fact, I even flew them over 2 separate days. So it does keep track of what you load in the aircraft on the way up there. You don't have to complete them all at the same time. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to head down to SVTM, I think it's down someplace in southern Venezuela, and we will proceed on from there on our goal to try to make it down to Brazil so we can check up the New World update. I just keep getting distracted by the shiny Caribbean every time I start flying. Okay, let's go back to home. But before we get going, I wanted to address something that's going to become more and more appropriate as we have an aircraft that A, can now fly up in the flight levels, and B, is going on longer and longer flights. And that is, should we be flying SIDs and stars? A SID is a standard instrument departure, and a star is a standard terminal arrival route. They effectively do the exact same thing, which is position the aircraft either to start its journey to wherever its final destination is going to be, or position the aircraft in a position to land with minimal air traffic control intervention. I pulled up an example of a SID here, and this is while it might look slightly confusing to start with, this is a standard instrument departure, the Plummer 3 departure from Atlanta going up to Philadelphia, and the goal is to get you up to the Plummer intersection without air traffic control having to give you vectors or turn you or give you the appropriate altitudes. Remember, we're going to have aircraft landing here, and so it needs to keep all the aircraft out of the arriving traffic and get you kind of up on course. And then from Plummer, that'll be our anchor where we fly the rest of our route, our Q, T, or J routes up to wherever we're going, right? Here's an example of a star. And we'll take the, Hobbit 2. We do this a lot when I'm coming in from the south, right? And you can see down at the bottom are several kind of feeder routes. So these are all routes that are coming in from the south for west landing traffic. And so you're going to be given, let's say, the Hobbit to arrival, Shire transition, and from there we'll proceed to Shire, Frodo, Baggins above flight level 240, Smog at above 17, Hobbit above 14, then Ensel right at 12,000, and then it gets you on to Eagles, Shirt, Fogre, Hit, and Yuri, at which point you'll be taken off, and then you'll go right into the ILS on one of the runways there. So should we be flying them? Well, let's go back to the SID. And the answer is maybe. If you look at the SID here, as I point out, there's a speed restriction. Accelerate to 250 knots. If unable, advise both tower and departure control on initial contact, i.e., they're never going to give it to you unless you can fly 250 knots. And so SIDs and stars are made for aircraft, primarily jet, but maybe a turboprop. We are kind of on the cusp. We can do around 220, 230. So if you're in a Bonanza, absolutely not. Do not fly a SID. Matter of fact, just point the aircraft to whatever your destination is, put in direct, and head that way. But if you're in a jet, probably, right? And if you're in a turboprop like I am, maybe. So I just wanted to cover that real briefly, as we'll be picking up more SIDs and stars as we move through. All right, so enough about that for now. Let's get back to OnAir and get the aircraft ready to go. The only thing I wanted to show you from this screen is make sure you come up here and check wait to load so we get all the passengers and cargo that you're going to be doing for your mission. And from here, we've seen this before. I'm going to very quickly get it all ready to go, and I will meet you out at the aircraft. Alrighty, I'm back with you. OnAir is already tracking, and now we just need to get the aircraft started. As I mentioned before in the last episode, the PC-12 is probably one of the easiest aircraft to get started in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So let's pull up the EFB, and then we'll go to the overhead panel. The very first thing we want to do is get our avionics master switch on. 1, 2. We'll check that our parking brake is set, and it is. We'll go to standby power, get that on. And now we're going to check the EPS, which stands for emergency power switch. And this is a completely independent system that will provide about an hour's worth of data to the standby horizon in case of a complete and utter electrical failure. So we'll go to test, and then we'll get that on. Then we'll put battery switch 1 and battery switch 2 on, and then come down here and check that we have 3 gear down into the green, and we can reset our fuel used to 0. All right, let's get it started. Back up here, and as always, let's make sure we get our beacon switch on so we don't get dinged, and our nav lights, and then the caution advisory system. That's what we just checked with the fuel page. And now we're going to put the ignition on. We are going to, let me get rid of the EFB for a second. Let's move this to the run position and then hit start. And now we are just going to wait until we get a nice stabilized start. As we can see down here on the bottom, the NG is spooling up, and we're just going to wait till that stabilizes. So let's bring up our checklist. We got engine, starter, we're checking, waiting for oil pressure. And we need to set our generators to the on position. So we'll wait till that gets fully up and running. And we will bring on generator 1, generator 2, and since we're getting ready to taxi, we'll just go ahead and bring on our strobe, our no smoking, our seat belts, pulse lights, and our taxi lights, and finally wing lights. All right, and that's pretty much it. Very easy aircraft to actually get started. All right, so I will meet you out on the runway in the interest of time, but let's get underway. All right, I'm back with you. We are on the runway. We've imported our flight plan. Let's go ahead and click flight level change and heading, and let's sync our heading bug. So it's pointing straight ahead. We've got our flaps down, and I don't know if you guys are see from the montage I'll put, or the quick time as I put through going out here, but man, there were a lot of taxiway lights everywhere that made absolutely no sense. Obviously, if Southwest had tried to depart from there, they would have used there other than the runway. All right, so I'm just going to bring the power all the way up. So I don't have to worry about over torquing anything on my takeoff roll. All right, I think we're ready to go. If you guys didn't get that reference, a Southwest plane attempted to take off a taxiway instead of the runway, so someone's in trouble. All right, just tracking right down the center line. Coming up on 80 knots. It is heavy.
Airborne time logged.
Max gross weight. All right, accelerating out, gear up. Flaps up. Gauge the autopilot. Will it work? Boy, we are really, really heavy. We'll come over here, put our yaw dampener on, and we'll hit nav. See if we can get ourselves on course. One of the things I really like about this system here, all we have to do is click and then drag the screen. Isn't that nice? All right, let's go back out, and we see we're on nav, autopilot, flight level change, and away we go. So because of all the passengers and cargo and fuel for this flight, we are about 20 pounds underneath max gross weight. So really, really heavy. And as you saw, it took me a little bit longer to rotate. And then as soon as I rotated, we got that stall warning just because we were just going so slow. All right, heading all our way up to flight level 280. Looks good. Let's verify. Flaps are up. Gear is up. Looks good. All right, so it looks like we're starting to get into the clouds here a little bit. We look down here, we see our saturated air temperature, SAT, is 7 degrees. At Frontier, we are anything below 10 degrees. We need to have our anti-ice system. So we will do the same here. We'll just go ahead and put our pitot heats on now that we are getting into the clouds. I don't see any ice buildup. There is some anti-icing stuff down here. Just get rid of this for a second. We have the inertial separator. We have propeller de-ice, and then right here we have our boots. Icing seems to be a fairly rare occurrence here in the game. I don't know if you noticed that we started off, I think it was around 130 knots, now we're at 140. It will change, should change for us, the speeds as we start our climb up. If you're unhappy with it, say we want to climb out a little bit faster since we have a long flight, let's just go over to manual, and then you can either use that knob or on the Honeycomb Bravo here, I will just dial in a little bit faster of a speed so we can get out of here. I think I have to check my notes, but I think above, was it 10,000? I think I have it here. 150 knots, and then about 15,000, above 15,000 is 150 knots. Sorry, words are hard again. And above 20,000 feet, climb out at about 140. And that's just because you'll see that the top of the V&E will start coming down on us. Gives us a little bit of cushion. So we'll just use a little bit faster of a climb out than normal. And this is only because I'm a dumbass. We need to take our igniters off. Do that right after we get a good engine start. That's what you get when you're trying to rush. Plus, as I mentioned before, I don't think the checklist is that great on this, but all right, coming up on 10,000 feet, we'll just go ahead and switch our landing light off. Nav lights on or off, and we'll just leave the strobe and the beacon on. All right, so pretty easy week this week for me at work. I only flew one day. And I know people like to hear about sometimes what goes on. Let me tell you what captain's life is like. So I'm briefing up my first officer. We're getting ready to go, going through my checks. My flight attendant comes in and says, I need to make you aware of something. Very dramatic. I go, what? What's going on? And he goes, well, we have a passenger that has really bad BO. I'm like, okay. He says, well, we think we want to kick him off the plane. I'm like, really? Okay, well, what does your manual say? They say, well, if we all agree, he has to go. I'm like, all right, well, you do what you need to do. One thing about being a captain is you're responsible for literally everything that happens on board the aircraft. But there's a lot of stuff, like especially on the ground, that you're just not, first of all, I just don't care enough about. And B, I don't have a whole lot to say, right? Half the time, I just tell them, the flight attendants, well, what does your manual tell you? I don't know if we can kick people off that have BO. Not something I need to know about. So he comes back in about 10 minutes later and says, well, 2 of the flight attendants agree that he has bad BO and 1 doesn't, so we're going to let him stay. Okay, well, thanks for that. So, captain life, responsible for everything. A lot of times you don't even have input, which I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't want input on whether a passenger fly if they have BO. But, that is captain life. All right, so we're going to continue this climb up to flight level 280 and get underway. I don't think there's a whole lot more exciting things that are going to happen between now and probably the start of our approach. So I will cut you out here, and I will rejoin you probably as we're making our close to our final descent into SVTM, wherever that is down in Venezuela. All right, I'll see you all in just a couple seconds. Before we start the approach, I would like to show you how to work the navigation system. Let's zoom in. And as I've demonstrated several times, this is a touchscreen, so if you want to review the flight plan, literally just left click and drag anywhere on the screen there. I don't know if my cursor is going to show up. If we look up to the very top here, we see we're on a heading of 144. We have 84 miles to the next waypoint, Charlie Bravo Charlie. At 0.47 Mach, it'll take us 18 minutes, and we'll get there at 14:25. As of now, we have no approach selected. So what we want to do is just come over to here and click on Star Landing. Then click on Runway Approach Star. And from here, we'd be able to select it if it wasn't already in the system. It just so happens at this airport, we don't have any actual approaches, but we can, just like in the Garmin 1000, select a visual approach. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll choose runway 8, visual, and we'll choose straight in. And then we're going to click insert. Then we want to click activate. And now, as we drag through here, we will see we now have a discontinuity, which we'll remove here in just a second. It also has an altitude that we need to aim for, in this case, above 2129, with the runway being 586 feet. So let's click on discontinuity, and then we could delete that waypoint. And then we can select activate again. Let's say we are just coming up on Charlie Bravo Charlie, and we would like to go direct to UTAG. Once again, click on Gmap, and then we'll select delete waypoint, activate. Now we've created a discontinuity again, and we will delete that waypoint, activate, and now we can proceed direct to whatever waypoint we like. It'll also give us the top of descent notation, and then we can just simply fly to top of descent and start the approach. The other thing, before we get too far ahead, as we come over to here, you do have the ability for auto thrust to be active. Whether you use it is going to be up to you. I've actually had somewhat poor luck in using it, as when I start my top of descent and go down, I've actually overspent the aircraft. So for me, I use it up here at altitude so I can maintain a constant airspeed, but once I start the approach, I'm probably just going to disconnect auto thrust and then just manually, like any other aircraft, control my speed via power. All right, so we're continuing on. We still have like another hour and a half to go, so I will meet you as we are down starting our approach. All right, see you in a second.
time logged.
Quick taxi back in. Let's hope I can get fuel here. I actually didn't check. I think it was a size 3 or size 4 airport, so I didn't bother checking. Let's see here. One thing about this aircraft is you really need to be on the brakes. Alright, as we taxi off, stupid rudder pedals creak. Let's get our landing light off, our taxi light on. Pull up our gear. All right. Put our brake on. Let's go to the overhead panel. And let's get off our seatbelts, smoking, pulse, taxi. Nav, strobe, and wing, and let's pull power.
Engine off time logged. The flight is finished. It has been monitored by OnAir.
All right, we'll turn that off, and we'll just shut everything down. All right, let's see how we did. All right, let's see here. We got all of our bonuses. That looks good. Let's check out the bank, more importantly. All right, $32,000 in cash. That looks good. And let's see if there's actually any jet fuel here. I did not check that at all. Okay, thank God. Looks like we actually have Jet A here, so we are going to make it out of here. All right, so we covered some SIDS and stars when we may or may not use them. If I can find any good SIDS or stars, I will incorporate them in the flight. Next flight, we'll also go over maybe a little bit more of the navigation stuff on the Pilatus. I was using a sim brief that I had imported, but you can punch it right in directly from there, and I can show you how to do that. Matter of fact, I think I'll do that on the next flight. And once again, thank you everybody for all your support. I greatly appreciate it. If you like this video, comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care for now. Bye.